King Theron ascended to the throne young, his heart pure, his intentions noble. The people rejoiced. He promised prosperity, fairness and justice. From the very beginning, his reign was marked by a deep commitment to the well-being of his subjects. He was not just a ruler, but a guardian of his people's hopes and dreams.
I vow to bring prosperity, fairness and justice to all corners of our kingdom. No one shall be left behind, and every voice shall be heard.
Theron, unlike his predecessors, walked among his people. He believed that a true king must understand the lives of those he governs. He listened to their concerns, their joys and their sorrows. He was a king who knew the names of his subjects and the stories of their lives. He ruled with compassion and wisdom. Peace reigned, the kingdom flourished. Under his guidance, the fields were bountiful, the markets were bustling, and the people were content.
I hear you, my people, and I will rule with compassion and wisdom. Your happiness is my duty, and your prosperity is my mission.
Theron married a woman of equally kind heart, Queen Lyra. Together they were a symbol of unity and love for the kingdom. She bore him a son, Prince Arion. The kingdom celebrated. The birth of the prince was seen as a blessing, a promise of continuity and hope for the future. Theron, now a father, felt the weight of his responsibility. He knew that his actions would shape the world his son would inherit. He vowed to create a better world for his son. A world where justice, fairness and prosperity were not just words, but realities. His reign, it seemed, would be a golden age. The kingdom thrived under his leadership, and the people looked to the future with hope and confidence.
For my son and for all of you, I will create a better world. A world where every child can dream, every family can thrive, and every individual can find their place. This is my promise to you, my people, and to the generations yet to come.
Years passed. Theron's rule remained strong. His kingdom flourished under his watchful eye, and his people initially prospered. The land was fertile, the coffers were full, and peace reigned. Theron was celebrated as a wise and just ruler, a beacon of hope in a tumultuous world. Yet a change stirred within him. As the years went by, the weight of the crown began to press heavily upon his brow. The responsibilities of leadership, once a source of pride, now felt like chains binding his spirit. A subtle shift, like a serpent coiling around his heart, began to take hold. Doubts and fears crept into his mind, whispering insidious thoughts. The once noble king started to see threats where there were none. Enemies in the shadows and betrayal in every corner. He grew obsessed with power. He craved control. His advisors noticed. They cautioned him, their voices filled with concern and loyalty. They reminded him of the virtues that had once guided his rule, urging him to remember the welfare of his people. Power, they warned, was a dangerous beast. It could consume even the strongest of men, turning them into tyrants. But Theron, blinded by his ambition, dismissed their words as mere folly.
I am the king, my will is law. I alone know what is best for my kingdom. I know what's best for my kingdom. My vision is clear and my decisions are just. Those who oppose me are enemies of the state.
Theron dismissed their concerns. He knew best. His advisors, once trusted confidants, were now seen as obstacles to his absolute rule. He began to isolate himself, surrounding his throne with sycophants who echoed his desires. He began consolidating his power. He silenced dissent with an iron fist. He levied heavier taxes, draining the wealth of his subjects to fund his grandiose projects and military campaigns. The people, once prosperous, felt the strain. Their livelihoods were threatened, their freedoms curtailed. The joy that once filled the streets was replaced by fear and uncertainty. Their whispers of discontent fell on deaf ears. In the markets and taverns, in the fields and homes, the people spoke in hushed tones, afraid of the king's spies. They longed for the days of old when their voices were heard and their needs met. The king, consumed by his ambition, no longer heard them. His heart, once open and compassionate, had turned to stone. He gazed out from his castle, seeing only his own reflection in the grandeur he had built.
My decisions are final. I will not be questioned. My authority is absolute. I will not tolerate dissent. Any who oppose me will face the full wrath of my power. This is my kingdom, and I will rule it as I see fit.
Fear began to grip the kingdom. Theron's grip tightened. He saw enemies everywhere. The once peaceful and prosperous land was now overshadowed by a dark cloud of suspicion and dread. The villagers, who once thrived under the king's rule, now lived in constant fear of his unpredictable wrath. The castle, once a symbol of hope and protection, had become a fortress of paranoia and distrust. He trusted no one, not even his closest advisors. His paranoia grew. Every whisper, every glance, every shadow seemed to harbor a threat. The king's court, once filled with laughter and camaraderie, was now a place of silent tension. Advisors who once offered wise counsel now feared for their lives, knowing that a single misstep could lead to their downfall. He built a network of spies. These shadowy figures lurked in every corner of the kingdom, listening.
This video is proudly sponsored by Gologan, the best browser for multi-accounting. That's a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get back to our video.
Watching and reporting back to the king. No one was safe from their prying eyes. The people felt the weight of their gaze, knowing that any word spoken in confidence could be twisted and used against them. The king's paranoia had turned the kingdom into a web of deceit and mistrust. He imprisoned anyone who dared question his authority. The dungeons overflowed with those who had once been loyal subjects, now branded as traitors. Families were torn apart, and the cries of the imprisoned echoed through the castle walls. The king's justice was swift and merciless, leaving no room for dissent. The fear of imprisonment silenced many, but it also fueled a growing anger among the people.
We cannot live like this any longer. We must do something. The villagers, once passive and fearful, began to find strength in their shared suffering. They gathered in secret, whispering plans of resistance. The determination in their eyes grew stronger with each passing day. They knew that their only hope for a better future lay in their own hands. The time for action had come.
The kingdom, once vibrant, became shrouded in fear. The markets, once bustling with life, were now eerily quiet. The streets, once filled with laughter and song, were now haunted by the silence of despair. The people moved like shadows, their faces etched with worry and sorrow. The joy and hope that once defined the kingdom had been replaced by a pervasive sense of dread. The people whispered in hushed tones. They spoke of the king's cruelty. They shared stories of his madness, of the unjust punishments and the relentless surveillance. The whispers grew louder, spreading from village to village, igniting a spark of rebellion in the hearts of the oppressed. The people knew that they could not endure this tyranny any longer. They spoke of the king's cruelty. They spoke of his madness. They spoke of rebellion. The anger and frustration that had been simmering beneath the surface began to boil over. The villagers, once afraid to speak out, now found courage in their shared plight. They knew that their only chance for freedom lay in standing together against the tyrant who had brought so much suffering to their land. They spoke of his madness. They spoke of rebellion. The plans for uprising took shape in the shadows as the villagers plotted their course of action. They knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they were willing to risk everything for the chance to reclaim their lives and their kingdom. The spirit of resistance grew stronger with each passing day, but their voices were small. The fear of the king's retribution still loomed large, and many were hesitant to take the first step. The villagers knew that they needed a leader, someone who could unite them and inspire them to rise up against the tyranny. They looked to one another, searching for the spark that would ignite the flames of rebellion. And Theron, lost in his world of power, remained oblivious. Surrounded by luxury and sycophants, he was blind to the suffering of his people. The king's obsession with control had isolated him from the reality of his kingdom. He believed that his iron grip would keep him safe, unaware that it was only tightening the noose around his own neck.
The king's cruelty knows no bounds. We must rise up. The call to action echoed through the villages as the people prepared to take their fate into their own hands. The time for whispers had passed. The time for rebellion had come. The villagers, united in their determination, knew that they had the power to change their destiny. The fight for freedom was about to begin.
The once grand kingdom fractured. The people, burdened by taxes and living in fear, grew restless. Dissent, once a whisper, became a roar. Theron, blinded by his delusion, saw only enemies. He responded with brutality. He sent his soldiers to quell the unrest.
Crush the rebellion, show them no mercy.
Blood stained the cobblestone streets. The stench of fear and death hung heavy in the air. Theron, however, remained unmoved. He believed he was right. He believed he was strong. He was the king. His word was law.
I am the king, my word is law.
One by one, Theron's advisors abandoned him. They could no longer condone his tyranny. Only Ilara, his most trusted, remained. She pleaded with him.
Your Majesty, listen to your people. You are breaking their spirits.
Theron scoffed.
They are ungrateful. They do not understand the burden of leadership.
Ilara persisted.
They are starving. They are terrified. They are your people. You are their king, not their jailer.
Theron's face hardened. Enough, he thundered. You overstep your bounds, old woman. He banished Ilara from the castle. He would not tolerate dissent, not even from her.
He was alone now, isolated by his power and paranoia. The kingdom teetered on the brink of chaos. The people, desperate for change, found a leader, a young blacksmith named Kylan, known for his courage and compassion. He had seen the king's cruelty firsthand. He would lead the rebellion.
Kylan rallied the people. He spoke of freedom, of justice, of a return to Theron's early noble reign.
The people, inspired by his words and fueled by their anger, flocked to his banner. The rebellion had begun. The rebellion spread like wildfire. From the villages to the towns, the people rose up. They fought with the ferocity of the oppressed, their cries for justice echoing across the land.
Theron, finally realizing the depth of his people's anger, found himself facing a force he could not control.
The final battle raged before the castle gates. The rebels, though outnumbered, fought with the strength of their conviction.
Theron, clad in his armor, watched in horror as his reign crumbled around him. He had miscalculated.
The castle gates were breached. Theron, his power stripped away, was captured. He looked upon the faces of his former subjects, their eyes burning with righteous anger. In their eyes, he saw his failure. He saw the monster he had become. Theron was imprisoned in the very dungeons he had filled. He died a broken man, stripped of his power and the love of his people.
Kylan, the blacksmith, became the new king. He ruled with fairness and compassion, remembering the lessons of Theron's reign.
The kingdom slowly healed. Theron's name became a cautionary tale, a reminder that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It was a lesson whispered on the wind, a warning for all who sought to rule.